Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Millennial Smark, and I'm back at it again with another video. This one's going to be a little bit different. I've been thinking about this for a while now, but I had no way to form it into words. You know, it's like locked deep inside your psyche, and you try to ask yourself, damn, what does this all mean? Like, what am I trying to get out that I can't really say? I can't formulate it into an actual coherent thought. And it just dawned on me last night. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Now, first and foremost, let me just say, I make no bones about it going forward. As you can see with the content that's been uploaded these past few months, I've been going really hard at AEW, right? I talk about WWE, but when it comes to AEW, and I do it to WWE too, but more so on AEW, I really criticize the hell out of them. One can even call this a hater AEW channel. Whatever prerogative or a pejorative, that you would like to use in order to make some type of analysis, it is what it is. Like I said, what matters in the end of the day is whether or not my opinion has merit or it doesn't. And if you're not going to go after the opinion and you hate it, that just tells me everything that I know. But I always made it a point to say that I want AEW to succeed. I've always made it a point to notate the fact when looking at WWE and AEW, always highlighting that WWE, it's a commodity, right? It's a business conglomerate. There's nothing that can be done to affect WWE outside of the competition. If left to its own devices, WWE, they're going to do whatever they want to do. They have the money, endless amounts of money. They have the reputation. They have the influence. They can afford to make the decisions that they make. The only thing that pushes WWE going forward is actual competition. And the thing with AEW is that they're still malleable, right? They haven't been bogged down by stockholders. They haven't been bogged down by things compared to, say, WWE, right? And I feel like there is still so much opportunity, so much disposable tools in their arsenal to be used to go forward to not only make their company better, but be the only thing that causes change within WWE. Full on change, right? Not something that we get once a week, not something that we get a story in a given period of time that is constantly being retreaded, like the Bloodline story, for an example. But constant performance that actually piques our interest. That's the primary focus I focus on AEW for nowadays. Critiquing them every chance I get because they are malleable. They can be molded into a professional wrestling company that everybody likes. But I've come to notice over the past few years, when it comes to AEW, a lot of young men, a lot, that's their primary audience. Not women, not people over 49, right? Hell, not even teenagers. Young men. That 25 to 34 demographic, right? You can extend it outwards a little bit towards 40. You can bring it inwards a little bit from 21, but particularly that 25 to 34 demographic. That right there, that's their core audience fan base. You go on Twitter, you go on social media, that's them right there. And you know the problem is these men, unfortunately, We're talking about late Zoomers, people directly in the middle of being a millennial. The problem with these people is that they've been indoctrinated by pop culture and the standards of what they tell these men that they can do and what they can't do, right? They've gotten their balls ripped off. They've gotten their balls stumped on. They've been told that they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. The court systems, the government in general, seems like everything is more so towards a favoring of women, which is fine. You know, I don't necessarily hate the idea, only because I've always had this belief that men, being masculine, should be able to persevere against anything. But there is a problem when that perseverance in itself is considered toxic masculinity, right? Because the perseverance is being able to look things dead in the eye and tell it the truth. Look things dead in the eye and move forward without worrying about the consequences, right? Look things dead in the eye and not worry about who you're offending. The end goal is the goal. And I feel like all that's been taken away from that specific demographic. Like I said, you can go 18 to 49 if you want to, but primarily the 25 to 34. That's been taken away. All the incentive, right, to be a quote unquote man. There is no toxic masculinity. There's bad behavior and then there's good behavior. But toxic masculinity, generalize everything that makes a man and then calling it toxic, that in itself is toxic. And you have all these men nowadays indoctrinated by that perception, cultivated by pop culture, that make them believe that they have to act a certain way, that they have to behave a certain way, that they have to think a certain way. So even within the confines of what one may call, you know, like the creme de la creme of toxic masculinity, professional wrestling, one may say that should be our safe space, right? Theoretically, that should be a time for men to be men. It's professional wrestling. It's high testosterone, right? Call it fake, call it real, simulated, whatever. It's still violence. And in our nature, all men are violent. The part about the violence in regards to men is that we have to do our best to contain it, but we're all violent by nature. What makes us human is how do we regulate said violence, right? And that's, like I said, we come to football, we watch basketball, we watch soccer, we watch boxing, we watch MMA, and believe it or not, professional wrestling, it's also a part of that. But lately, what we've been seeing in professional wrestling, and again, I want to focus directly on AEW because, like I said, with WWE, I feel as if they would have no qualms about going in the direction of toxic masculinity if it meant the perseverance or preserving, their business model, right? But they have no incentive to go in that direction without being pushed in that direction. Again, that's when AEW comes along. The so-called alternative, right? This is what I mean when I focus on a company like this. That 25 to 34 demographic, they call it the 18 to 49. But again, I say 25 to 34 because that core demographic right there is what's going to influence the older generation to want to stay in tune to said demographic and the younger generation who look up to said demographic. That's who sets the trends, the 25 to 34. And when you consistently berate them, when you consistently take away anything in regards to motivation for them to even want to do anything remotely manly, then in the end of the day, who the fuck are we watching? Who the fuck are we looking towards to? Who the fuck are we even trying to... I'm stammering on my words right now, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? You get where I'm going with this. I need AEW to stop trying to not make their product a wrestling product, which means by default, It is unapologetically toxic masculinity. I need them to take that perception that has always been displayed in regards to professional wrestling. I need them to take that aura, that energy. I need them to cultivate that, and I need them to just make that their product. They need to be unapologetically masculine. You guys remember that show Mansers back on Spike TV about like 15 years ago? I need them to be that unapologetic. As a matter of fact, the entire Spike TV brand as a whole, which was supposed to be for men, if you remember that, I need them to be that unapologetically toxic in their masculinity. Because in the end of the day, I feel like when you give the narrative to certain people in order for them to hone and again cultivate in their own right, and then put out there and say the things that they want to say about this given topic, this given subject, because they want to create something brand new. They want to create a brand new coalition. You take away from the traditions of what actually even gave them a platform to begin with to cultivate said narrative and said image, right? Like we need AEW as a wrestling company to focus on sexiness. There is nothing wrong with a woman being sexy. Now, they sort of kind of do it once in a while. Like, what's the girl's name? The Asian chick, the Mira Shikawa, whatever her name is. Her making out all the time with Toni Storm and Mariah May and all that. They kind of touch on, like the titty shaking stuff they were doing last Wednesday. More of that. But not just more of that. Go a little bit further, all right? Bra and panty matches are not a bad thing. Instagram models get likes on their posts in the hundreds of thousands, maybe even in the millions for some of them, for the things that they post, the thirst traps that they post on social media. I always find it super hilarious that you have today's society, which is getting more and more hypersexualized, and then within the bubble of professional wrestling, we need to get less sexualized at the same time when society is getting more sexualized. Whereas back in the days, it was in reverse, right? Society back then was more conservative. We had the parent-teacher rights, or whatever the fuck they're calling themselves back in the days. The artists that fucking Right to Censor parodied. You had society that was conservative and professional wrestling somewhat kind of leading the trend in regards to Playboy and all that kind of stuff. It's the reverse effect nowadays. Like, I never thought the liberals would become the conservatives, but I guess that's where we're at nowadays, right? I need that to come back. You can always ask the women. There is nothing wrong with asking the women whether or not they would like to participate in said thing. I see nothing wrong with that. I see nothing wrong with women being sexy. They say it all the time, right? They're sexy and they're powerful, right? I see nothing wrong with that. I don't know why a woman, like, for an example, not to say that I'm necessarily attractive to her, but she has a lot of men who like her, right? Wouldn't turn her down to fuck if she asks. But someone like a Sasha Banks or Mercedes Moné, for an example, I see no reason why she can't wrestle, do her gimmick, and still come out and, show off her body one chance. And I don't see a reason. These women do it all the time on different platforms. There's nothing wrong with asking. If they don't want to do it, fine. They don't have to do it. Hire some women who are actually going to do something like that, because I guarantee you they will be the ones to bring the ratings. It's not sexist. It's not misogynist. We love women and we want to see more of them. I don't see a reason why you can't have both. Why can't you have both? I think taking jobs from women is about as sexist and misogynist as giving them jobs. And I don't see why they themselves, if they're popular enough, would be influenced to want to stay around even longer to maybe actually become good wrestlers. Again, look at Trish Stratus. It's not like this is something that doesn't happen. Like, it happened already. I don't see it. Like, the whole, nonsense of, you're reverting women back. You're not reverting anyone back. You're embracing sexiness. You're embracing what genetically, biologically, their bodies were made for. I don't see a problem with that. You know, I want to see more development in regards to being able to touch on topics and slurs and all this other kind of stuff. I don't see why that's so bad within the confines of professional wrestling. Like, either it's fake and we recognize it's fake and we don't use it in any other situation in order to, I don't know, opportunistically take down an argument, or it's not fake. Which one is it? Which one is it? Okay, it's scripted, right? So we know the person who's playing the character, they're not really that person. I don't see why we can't go around the realms of talking about or saying things about someone's immutable characteristics that typically one may not talk about. I don't see why you can't see a girl and then call her, some type of derogatory words. I'm not going to say it on YouTube, obviously, because I'm not trying to get this video blocked or anything, because I need this video. This is one of my more important videos. I need this to be stated. I don't see why you can't say things about a guy's skin color. I don't see why you can't say things about a guy's hair texture. I don't see why you can't say things about, a thing about a person's nose, or, the way they speak, or things that we would typically as men joke around with that people will call crass and call rude. But at the same time, we understood at the time that, at least within that context, it was all just to get a laugh. That's the whole purpose of being edgy. It was all just to get a laugh. We understood that. When Godfather came out and he seen Goldust, and he William Regal, and he was going to give William Regal the hose, and then William Regal took the hose, right? And he was surprised that he took him. And he was like, he thought William Regal, because England are a bunch of mags, and it rhymes with F. He said it clear as day on television. Jerry Lawler did the same thing to Goldust. That's what I got confused with the first time, when he blatantly in the King of the Ring qualifying matches, or somewhere on the King of the Ring. It was around that time in '97 when he called Goldust the same thing. But people get so overly offended by that kind of stuff. They get overly offended about you talking about the LGBT community. They get overly offended whenever you bring up something about a guy's weight or height or something like that. They get angry about a person. Actually, I wouldn't even say that. Honestly, I take that back. No, I'm sorry. That's actually the actual sexist part in itself. You can go after a guy's height and weight, right? Really not even the weight anymore. Really just typically the height. It's the weight that's actually typically about the men, but more so importantly towards the women. You can't even get the women to announce their weights, right? As far as when they come out to the ring. That's been the thing for like 25 or 30 years now. But my point being is, I see no reason as to why we can't be crass, we can't be edgy, we can't go in those realms as far as social political commentary when talking about professional wrestling. The world is a thing. Pop culture currently right now is politics. I don't see why that has to be a thing that we have to divert. Because again, whenever you actually go within those realms of talking about it, then it's going to be, oh, look at that. The fucking person who's discussing it at the moment is a big meaty head doofus. Like the guy who's talking about this currently at the moment, making the jokes that he's making at the moment. He's a sexist, bigoted, homophobic, and typically they like to conflate that with toxic masculinity also, right? The men, the appearance of the men in itself. We talked about this plenty of times before in the past too. Look at the people on television. You think that's done by accident? The Darby Allins of the world, the Orange Cassidys of the world, the Sammy Guevaras of the world, the Jack Perrys of the world. When you got Swerve Strickland on television, he towers over your smaller guys. That's a huge problem. That's a ginormous problem. When Jon Moxley is Andre the Giant compared to all the wrestlers on your roster, that's a problem. That's a huge, huge, huge problem. Even worse when he has to sell like he's one of the cruiserweights, when in reality he's twice the size of a cruiserweight. And that's Jon Moxley, a guy who was just the average size of a professional wrestler. One may even say, if this was, say, back in, 1991, he'd be considered on the smaller side. He'd be considered a Bret Hart or a Shawn Michaels, or at least not too far away from their stature. We need men to look like men. We need huge muscles. We need something for our boys, our young men, to ascribe to want to be. They can never be that, but at the same time, if they think to themselves that if they try their best to go towards that, then at least there's a goal to go towards, right? Because that's the goal, right? The goal is not to be that. The goal is to work hard. That's the goal, to work hard. All these things, man. The sexuality of the women, the crass joke telling, but knowing in the end of the day, the story is the person doing the crass joke telling, either A, he's saying it to a bad person, which is never a bad thing. You know, you see all these talks about respect the pronouns of a what would you call it, a transgender person, respect their pronouns, even though they're doing something just irreparable and evil. We should still respect their pronouns, even though they're a child toucher or something like. Respect the No, bad people do bad things. They should be called bad things. They should not be respected. And I see nothing wrong with having a good guy disrespecting a bad guy. Maybe telling someone that if you're a bad guy, that maybe you won't be called these things if you act more responsible and respectful. You know, all these things build up into one thing that I feel that if AEW touched on, they do it obviously in a more creative manner. You don't just spaz out and do all this stuff and just be edgy for the sake of being edgy. No, I'm not suggesting that at all. You do it in a creative manner. You make it clear and concise when you put it out there. And you make it known that the product that you currently have at the moment was made for man, by man. You put people out there who look like man. You give them a reason to act like man. You put women out there as eye candy for the most part. And this is what you do to grow your audience. This is what you do to grow your company. This is what you do for the most part to make sure you actually stand out as a legitimate alternative. Not runaway young man. Not putting twinks on television and trying to have them cosplay as men. Not saying that the women should go out there and do everything and anything but be sexy. And if you even look at their gear, like even their wrestling gear, which is about as close as you could possibly get to them being eye candy, if you even say anything in regards to their gear and what is showing off, when that's clearly what their intent is trying to do, because they themselves want to be as sexy as society says that they can't be, well, that makes you a misogynist and a sexist and a creep and a pervert and all these other kinds of things that was pretty much just second nature a couple of decades ago at this point, actually. Stop running away, young men. They're your core audience base. I don't know why this has to be said. Well, I do. It's 2024. That's why it has to be said. But stop it. You want to be a true alternative, stop running away, young man. That's the future of your audience. That right there is your foundation. That's your projection for your forecast going forward. Those are the people who are leaving in droves. And who they're leaving behind are a bunch of disaffected young men who I guarantee you, if there was some, even remotely, just a crumb of influence, because apparently you're AEW and you do no wrong, if there was even a crumb of influence, they get behind you. They pump their fist. They'll tote the flag. And more men would join them. And more men would join them. And more men would join. This is exactly what happened in 96, 97, before WWE exploded in 98. But they're not going to hear what I'm going to say, obviously. Speaking into the void, preaching to the choir. It is what it is. Insults get thrown out. You need to focus strictly on the wrestling in itself. Yeah. Yep. Heard it plenty of times before. We'll see what that gets you in about 5 years, though, right? Let me hear your thoughts down in the comment section below in regards to how the commentary, for the most part, resonates with you. I don't think I said anything offensive. Obviously, it's going to be that one person, but it is what it is. I am curious, though, how this reflects off of you. How do you feel about this? It's not as if I'm saying something that's completely out of character. It's not as if I'm ignoring WWE. It's to suggest that I know AEW are struggling and they're having a problem. It's not just being second place anymore. It's now being a second place that's currently at the moment being harmed. When you have your top guy in Kenny Omega who's making excuses to not want to come back to your company because he sees the writing on the wall, you know there's a problem. There's no amount of contracts being signed at the moment that's going to tell me anything else differently. I see the metrics, I see the numbers, and I see how this plays out going down the road. You sit back and you say, if they keep consistently doing the same numbers going into the future, well, they're going to get a different contract. If they're doing the same pattern that they're doing right now, then no, they're not, because what I see is 200,000 in their future. And then what at that point, huh? Then what? As always, my name is Devontae, aka Millennial Smart, and I'll be catching you guys later. Deuces, P. Ice.